Alright, before we get started, I just want to give a quick shout out to my subscribers. Without you, none of this would be possible, so thank you. First thing I want to talk about is baker's percentages. So, baker's percentages is a key metric, I guess, that people baking sourdough use, or bread in general. So, if we look at this, all of the percentages are based off of your starting amount of flour. So the flour is 100% basically of our the basis that we're basing all the other percentages off of. So if we are doing 500 grams, for example, then a 65% hydration loaf would be 325 grams of water. I typically do 70 to 75% hydration loaf, so 70% would be what, 350. But I encourage people that are pretty new to bread making to do a lower amount of hydration just because it is easier to work with. As you get the hang of it more, you can start to bump it up a little bit. But so for this, I just did a 65%. Salt is always going to be 2%. So in this case, it'd be 10 grams. The reason is that salt adds flavor to your loaf, but it also inhibits too much fermentation. So if you do too much salt, it won't ferment properly. If you don't do any salt, it will not taste right, but it also may ferment too quickly. And then the third thing is just the starter. So, you know, you can change the amount that goes into it, typically 20-ish%. If you do less, it'll just slow down your fermentation time a little bit. But there's some flexibility with that. And then inclusions, so that's our, in this case, roasted garlic and some parmesan. We're going to do between 5 to 15%. A lot of people want to do a lot of inclusions straight away, but this is kind of the general recommendation, I'd say, of the percent that you want to include. All right, now that we got that out of the way, we can start with the loaf. All right, so we're going to start with the water. If you've never used a food scale before, what you would want to do is turn it on, make sure that it's showing grams as the weight metric that's being, or unit that's being shown. And then you want to make sure that your measuring instrument is already on it, and you would level it to 0. I've already measured it out, but in this case we're doing 325. So see, it says 0. I don't know if you can see on the screen. And we're doing 325. Like I said, I typically do a higher hydration anyway, so I'm not too worried if it's 3 grams over in this case. Then we're going to do salt next. So in this recipe, we're doing 10 grams, always the 2%. Alright, then we're going to level that out again. And we're doing 100 grams of starter. This starter just came straight out of the fridge. Let's see if we can get it close enough to 100. Wow, pretty good, 96. And then while I have this starter out, I am going to feed it and then stick it back in the fridge, and I probably won't use it again until next week or so. Then we're going to add the flour. So I use the Costco organic, the Kirkland brand all-purpose flour. Oftentimes I'll do a mixture, so this is white, I'll do a mixture of whole wheat, so I might do 50 grams of whole wheat in that, or like spelt or something. Just changes the flavor a little bit. All right. Once again, a couple grams here or there isn't gonna make or break the loaf. But we're getting it as close to 500 as possible. Next step is just to combine. If you wanted to get into the science of it all, a lot of recipes will have you combine the flour and the water first before you put the salt or the starter. That is just to do a process called autolyse, which builds the gluten structure to make a stronger structure for the bread. I found that if you just combine it all together, it's just a lot simpler process and still makes a good bread. So I tend to try to make the easiest loaf possible. So that's what I'm showing here. So what we're looking for is just to make sure that it's all hydrated. We don't want really any dry bits. So there's some at the bottom there. I'm gonna kind of just use my hands to get in here. And then I'm gonna let it sit for a few minutes, and then I'm gonna do its first stretch and fold. Yeah, we're starting to get there now. It's really not any dry bits in there. I think this is especially important with a lower hydration. If it's a higher hydration, it kind of is a lot stickier. So this is what we got so far. Just because I have a meeting coming up, I'm gonna try to do a stretch and fold straight away actually. It's not gonna stretch very good, but we're kind of just stretching from the outside, turning the bowl, and putting it back to the middle. Now you see I'm dipping my hand in some water. Typically I would just do it by the sink, but for the sake of this video, I got a bowl here. But this will start to give our dough a little bit of structure. A lot of recipes will say to do a stretch and fold every 30 minutes for the first couple hours. I typically will only do maybe 2, and then start into the bulk fermentation. All right, now we're doing stretch and fold number 2. Really 1 after that first one. I don't know if you can tell, but the dough is pretty smooth and looks a lot stronger than before. Do 1 more, and then we'll let it start to bulk rise. For the roasted garlic, I know some people take the head of garlic, chop the end off, drizzle some olive oil on it. I'm gonna try to just roast them as is. Just less cows. So we're gonna just wrap these up and see how it does. If it doesn't work, then next time we'll do some oil. I'm gonna throw these in the air fryer, maybe for like 20 minutes, see what happens. All right, so now we're gonna do our inclusions. It has been, let's see, I started about 1 p.m. and it is now 8:41 p.m. But as you can see, we've risen quite a bit in our bulk ferment. I probably could have let it go a little longer, but I'm going to let it proof in the Banneton basket overnight, so I'm not too worried about it. So I'm going to give a good amount of flour here. And then I'm going to use my bowl scraper to scrape this out. Onto that. Let's get some of the flour underneath the surface there to help me with the stickiness. So now I'm going to, I believe this step is called lamination. But I'll go ahead and get this nice and wide here. And I have my roasted garlic and parmesan already. So that was the 2 heads. I probably could have got a little more yield out of it, but I think that's pretty good. Probably should have used a spoon because it's kind of sticky. But here we'll just spread it out all over the bread here, or the dough. And I had some already like shredded parmesan. If you have like a block, it's probably better. But it's just, I already had it in the fridge, so. So I'm kind of just spreading it out. We're able to use this bench scraper as a non-stick hand of sorts. So I'm going to fold this in on itself and start to make the shape of my loaf here. So at first it's like a log, like that. But we will start to make it into a circle here. So you don't want too much flour on the bottom because you want the surface tension on the bottom. So as it starts to get the flour out of the way, we'll get a little bit of tension here. Maybe. I might have over-floured it. But as you can see, I'm kind of just moving it 90 degrees and then I have my hands flat and I'm pulling towards me. And I'm allowing the bench or the tabletop to create the tension for me. I kind of want it in oblong just because the basket that I'm using is that loaf shape. So I have this one that's an oval, or I have a circle. I prefer the oval usually, just a preference thing on the shape of my loaf. But I'll take some of this flour and just put it on top. So we don't mind if the top is floured. So I'll flip it over and just give it a clasp fold, I think they call it. And stick it in. And just make sure that my seam is sealed here at the bottom. I did not mention, but you want to make sure that your basket has flour in it so that it doesn't stick to the basket itself. And then If the edges need a little bit, you can like sprinkle some flour around if it seems like it's too sticky. And what I'm gonna do is cover this with a like plastic grocery bag and then let it proof in the fridge overnight since it's nighttime right now. And I'll bake it in the morning. Yeah, I'll just cover it with plastic baggie and stick it in the fridge like that. Alright, next morning, I'm gonna bake this. Pull this out of the fridge. I have preheated the oven to 450. And I actually already had this one cut from my last bake. You can reuse them usually 2 or 3 times before the parchment starts getting brittle. But you may be able to tell it's definitely gotten a little bit bigger from last night. And may not have floured my Banneton soup. Oh no, looked pretty good. So that's what we're looking like now. Now, make sure it's in the frame here. I am going to take my bread lump and I'm just going to do 1 slash. It's just to allow for the steam to have a controlled place to expand. Otherwise, you'll just get cracks everywhere. So, we're just going to go right down the middle. And if there's anywhere maybe didn't get it very good, I'll just fix it. And we'll put this in the oven for 30 minutes with the lid on, and then I'll do another 20 to 30 minutes with the lid off. Alright, disregard my dirty oven, please. But what we're gonna do now is, it smells delicious, remove that. So that has been the first 30 minutes. As you can see, my expansion didn't quite work. It's still split on the side there. So I probably should have done an extra cut or whatever, but it'll still be good. But we'll probably I'll do 15 minutes and then check it and see. Brother, look at that. I forgot to mention, I've been doing something lately about finishing it on a rack instead of in the pan, because my pans let the bottom get really dark. If your pans don't cause that, then there's no need to put it on a rack, but I've just been doing that because it keeps the bottom from getting burnt. Alright, she is beautiful. I might have let her, I was gonna say get a little dark on the bottom for sure, but wow, look at that garlic. It smells delicious. Can't wait to try it.